When working with watercolors, you want to make sure that that you're using plenty of water and you're activating the watercolor in the palette and then testing and mixing your colors in these other areas on your watercolor palette. So if you look here, I'm adding some water here and I'm mixing and getting the consistency correct. You'll kind of get a sense of it when you start experimenting with what is the right consistency of color that gives you the results that you're looking for. You want the watercolor to flow in layers. So we build watercolor in thin layers. We don't just go and apply something that's dark. So you can actually see here that there is a sense of transparency to what I'm putting down, the colors that I'm putting down. And then I'm going to move my brush around to try to build this. And we do this slowly and we let things dry in between the layers. If you're not careful, what ends up happening if you go too fast is things end up getting really watery and then the colors just kind of smear all around. What I'm doing here is I'm trying or attempting to render with watercolors the different values that are happening in this little sample picture here. You notice I start with the shadows and I'm gonna move on and let those dry. If I start getting this shadow here, I might risk pulling too much water into the rest of the picture. You're gonna get a sense of this. You just have to practice at it and you gotta experiment and see, and you'll make mistakes and you'll figure it out as you go. Now I'm gonna let that dry and I'm gonna move on to the other square. The thing about watercolors is you really have to be patient. You have to learn to put something down and let it completely dry, and then you can go back in and layer. Now on this other one, I have a red background. You'll notice that I used red here to darken my color. Now on this one, because I have a red background, I'm going to try and attempt to use the opposite color on the color wheel. So I'm gonna use green and I'm gonna mix a little bit of red in there to sort of neutralize it. We'll be talking about color theory in this class, but I want you to see what just happened right now when I mixed a little bit of red into that green. And notice I have green on my brush right now, so I'm not gonna directly take the red. I'm gonna wash my brush out in the water. Then I'll grab a little bit of red and mix that in. And now you can start to see what ends up happening. I'm going to actually mix the two of these together a little bit more. Until I get the color that I want, which is sort of, I want something that's not quite green and not quite red, somewhere in the middle. This looks pretty nice. It's a little green, but I'm going to go over here now and paint this on. Again, with this next area, I'm using the shape of the brush to define the shapes that I have here, and I'm going to move into other areas and let it dry before I continue. Watercolor is a process of layering, so you've got to work and then stop working. So I'm ready now to maybe move on to the spheres while I'm letting those areas dry a little bit more, and then we'll come back. And my basic idea here is that I want to experiment with using colors that are similar to red in this image. I'm going to use colors that are sort of opposite of red in this image. I'm going to use blues and greens. Here I'm going to use reds and oranges and yellows and maybe add some violet just to have a little bit of dark. But those are all similar in tone to red versus using the opposites in this. And I want you guys to do that, to experiment with what ends up happening. So I'm going to let these dry and I'm going to move on to the other images. Again, have fun with this, experiment with different things. I'm using my palette over here to mix my colors. So again, I can mix colors into here and I can try different things on this. I might have to switch my brushes for this one down here, but what I'm doing is I'm just trying out different combinations of color. So if I try, let's say, an orange over here, mixing that in with the red with a little bit, I added a little bit of green to kind of neutralize that. I'm gonna let that dry. I might even go ahead and grab my other brush right now. The more water that you mix in, the lighter the values end up being, so you can blend a little bit with, you'll see I added a little bit of pigment to this brush, but mostly I added water, and that's letting me kind of go through and blend this away. Now, because I don't want any more value, I'm just going to add some water to this area here. If you have a paper towel and you add too much watercolor at any one point, you can blot it out. It's called lifting. It's going to take away some of that color and that tone. Play around today. Be experimentative with this. There are no wrong answers. Again, some advice that I can give you is experiment with different colors, different tones, and use this to mix. I rarely ever will just take a straight color from here, because it just ends up usually not creating an interesting color combination when you do that, when you take just straight pigment from here and you put it down. Now again, watch what I did. I put a little bit of water, I put a little bit of paint down. Now I'm going to really wet this brush and just use this. Now I'm going to have to wash even more, because as soon as I put that down, I saw that that it was too much. So now I'm going to use this to sort of blend that away. I've got a little bit too much there, so I'll go grab a paper towel and blot it.